This is Why the Last Man podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about episode 5, Why the Last Man, Mann Hunt.
If I can figure out why you survived, and that's a big if, and I can somehow figure out a way to replicate it or replicate you, and again, that's an even bigger if, none of that even begins to scratch the surface of what we have lost, which is not, and I cannot emphasize this enough, men. Not everyone with a Y chromosome is a man. We lost so many people that day. So many brilliant women. And biodiversity. Because it's not just us. It's monkeys, and giraffes, tigers, dogs.
Welcome back, fellow survivors. This is Why the Last Man podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and it's episode 5, Mann Hunt. And that is man with double N, not one.
The Doctor Alison Mann Hunt.
Yes, indeedy doodly. I am one of your surviving hosts, John.
I'm one of your other hosts, Derek. Indeedly doodly, John. Have you got Flanders here
I think
in the
I have.
post-apocalypse?
Yes, I do. I do.
Yeah, just us two here today. Chris hasn't been able to join us for this episode, the 5th episode of Why the Last Man. And I know he's kicking himself because Dr. Alison Mann is the third of our triumvirate of characters that we follow all the way through Why the Last Man in the comic book. So a big character introduction. I think everybody who's watched this episode realizes kind of how cool the character is, or how interesting, let's say.
Definitely. And Diana Bang really does, she just inhabits this character. Really enjoyed her portrayal of Alison Mann in Boston, which is really, what's the quote? It has become a terrifying hellscape. Post-apocalypse. Post the Y chromosome going belly up.
It's weirdly one of the places of the US I've never actually been, is Boston. I've seen a lot of the US, but I've never seen Boston. I think some friends of mine moved there back in the 90s, and when they moved, they were living in Carolina with me when I was living there. Carolina is a very different place. It is the US. It's very like an American city where we were living. And when they moved to Boston, they just said, this feels like Dublin. It feels like Ireland when they moved there, just Ireland with American accents. I kind of went, well, if you're living in a foreign country, why would you move to somewhere that's exactly like where you moved from? So
I loved Boston.
You've been to Boston?
Yes, I have absolutely loved it. Yeah. And all the states north of it, because went on a trip up into Vermont and to the Von Trapp family lodge, a little slice of Austria, deep in the heart of the green, woody, forested state that is Vermont. Very strange. Alpine cows, milkmaids, all the hotel staff were dressed in all sort of Austrian, I guess, farm or peasant type clothing.
Right.
And really odd.
That is very strange.
Yes.
But since you've been to Boston, do you think this does a good replication of Boston in here in Why the Last Man? Did it feel like there were real landmarks that they were at, or did you think they were just repainting some buildings in Toronto or in
Well, there was
Vancouver
the nod to Fenway Park with the Boston Red Sox, the baseball team. Yeah. So, I mean, there was that. I can't say I recognised the stand-in for Harvard as such. I mean, kind of did go down to Cambridge whilst I was there in Boston as well, to Harvard and MIT, but I don't really recall that. I think it was more that I went with my friend to the House of Blues for a good old blues shindig.
Excellent.
Over breakfast.
Excellent.
I think it was. Yes.
Yeah. None of that open here in Why the Last Man, because obviously the city's burning. So not really many concerts to go to here in this version of Boston. Anyway, I just was wondering. There's this odd thing. They were filming the show during all the COVID lockdowns. They were complying to all the regulations around COVID. I know they've said there were massive difficulties, especially early on when you go back as a production. Everybody's a bit more strict, and the rules weren't as defined. They were very specific about, you know, people not being able to film on screen at the same time or being too close to each other. And then I was looking at this episode kind of going, ooh, I wonder, did they use that to their advantage? Did they actually film on the streets of Boston while everybody was in lockdown, you know? But maybe not. Maybe it was a different city. I just don't know.
Yeah, or just a set, maybe outdoor set or something.
I'm sure some of our American fellow survivors may be able to tell us if it was really Boston or whether it was just a soundstage somewhere else.
Absolutely. But I think before we get into our spoiler-filled discussion about episode 5 of Y: The Last Man, just a quick reminder to our fellow survivors, anyone that is new joining us, you can subscribe to the podcast over on tvpodcastindustries.com. Please search for us on any good or evil podcast catcher of your choice, where you can rate us, subscribe to us, leave a review, share the love, and of course share the podcast.
Yes,
for sure.
Absolutely. We'd also love to hear your thoughts on any of the shows we're covering. We're currently covering Why the Last Man and What If. The finale is out next week. If you want to send us any thoughts, you can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or if you're on Facebook, you can join us on facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. I put a spoiler post up there every week as the episodes are released, so that you can share your thoughts with other fellow like-minded survivors and defenders.
Yes, so get those commenting brains, those theorizing brains on and send us in your feedback. Derek, first up, what are some of the episode details for episode 5, Mann Hunt?
This show is based on the comic book series by Brian K. Vaughn and Pia Guerra, as we mentioned each week. Showrunner of the show is Eliza Clark. The episode here was written by Olivia Purnell. Previously, Olivia worked as a staff writer on season 2 of American Gods. A really good show to begin with, and unfortunately fell off over time. It's one of my favorite books, and unfortunately the adaptation just fell off over time. But I know the early seasons were really enjoyable for me to watch. Some great work done there on that show. Olivia's also written some episodes of Isaac Asimov's Foundation on the only streaming service I don't have, which is Apple TV. So I haven't gotten to see it, but I know you're really excited to see Foundation, John.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a load of good reviews about it, and then more recently I've seen a few kind of middling ones, so who knows, but I mean, it looks spectacular in terms of some of the stills I've seen of it, so yeah, I'd be definitely interested to see that. I mean, dare I say it, damn these subscription services. I mean, in the end, it's going to be going the same way as, you know, all other stuff where you'll need to fork out a ton of money. So
I think we're subscribed to every single streaming service other than Apple TV, though. It's the only one we don't have, and that's partly because we don't have any Apple devices, so we don't get that notification every day going, you get this for free with your subscription or whatever it is. So I always forget there is an Apple TV streaming service, to be completely honest.
Yeah, no, I do as well. And I guess they have oodles of money to throw at the TV.
Yes, they do.
I wish I could throw money at the TV, but maybe I will after tonight's lotto.
Oh yeah, the national lottery jackpot is 19 million in Ireland, which is the biggest jackpot ever. So yeah, ticket bought at all for that. Let's get back to the show though. The episode was directed by Mairzee Almas, who directed episodes of Shadow and Bone on Netflix, a show that you really liked this year.
I loved it. Yeah, really enjoyed that series, first series. I'm so pleased that they're getting a second season of that show. Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting. I hadn't read anything about it. I didn't know anything about it, and I love fantasy worlds. I am absolutely gagging for the Wheel of Time.
Oh yes,
so
which we'll be covering here on TV Podcast.
We will indeed. It comes out in
November, and we'll be covering it here. But as usual with the Netflix shows, when they drop the entire series in one day, it's something that we tend to avoid because we like having the weekly fun of talking about shows like Wheel of Time when it comes out on Amazon Prime later this year. But Mairzee Almas did do a couple of episodes of that show, but we've spoken about her a fair few times on this show.
Certainly did.
Back in our days of the Defenders TV podcast, we spoke about her. She directed one episode of Iron Fist and 2 episodes of Jessica Jones as well. One of our favourite shows from the Marvel Netflix era.
Yes, most definitely. So, great getting Mairzee Almas on board here. A little bit of history with Defenders podcast.
Absolutely. It's just always fun seeing catching up with directors that have directed shows that you've done and that you've liked in the past. But John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for episode 5 of Why the Last Man, Mann Hunt?
Sure. Agent 355 and Yorick have arrived in Boston to locate expert geneticist Doctor Alison Mann. But there's a problem. Boston is a battlefield. The National Guard is trying to protect Harvard from dissidents who don't trust the government and believe they are hiding something from them. Little do they know, they've already encountered the secret. Back in Washington, President Brown is also hiding Yorick's existence from the world as reports come back of the crash-stolen helicopters that were carrying her son. But she has another problem, as the original first in line to the presidency, Regina Oliver, is returning to the US, and she wants her job, and has the support of the president's daughter, Kimberley Cunningham. As Kimberley learns that the president's aide, Christine, is pregnant, Yorick and 355 navigate their way through the barricades and find Dr. Mann in hiding. They try to convince her to return to them to Washington, but Alison is having none of it. Not only does she not trust the government, her research at Harvard has been destroyed. So if Dr. Mann has any chance of resolving the world's problems, she needs to retrieve her backup research in San Francisco. While Dr. Mann and Yorick get to know each other, 355 takes off. Under the cover of contacting the president, she finds another agent at a safe house and learns that her former recruiter is also missing. With a new mission and destination in mind, Yorick, ampersand, 355 and Dr. Alison Mann set off for San Francisco, looking for the reason why and his pet were the only survivors.
Oh, we're in full comic book territory in this episode.
We certainly are.
This is
the road trip begins for sure.
This is absolutely the first 20 or so issues, or maybe even more, where we have these four characters together, Yorick, ampersand, 355 and Dr. Alison Mann. So I liked that they took a bit of time here to kind of set them all up and put them at odds with each other and have a little fighting with each other, and kind of setting up each of the characters and their interactions with each other. Even ampersand gets a few moments of fun when Dr. Mann's trying to, investigate what he is and looking at him, and Yorick's kind of going, look, he takes a little time to warm up to new people. Watch out, he might lose a hand, basically. Which I thought was a fun little moment. But yes, an interesting episode overall. It is only the two of us this time, so we're only going to talk about our two big moments, but we should be able to cover off the whole episode.
I think so. Yeah. I think so for sure. I mean, it is quite a simple episode. Yep. It is Yorick 355 meeting Dr. Mann, really. Mm-hmm. There's a few side elements from that, and then it's really back at the Pentagon with President Jennifer Brown and everything going on there as well.
And I know Chris isn't here this week, but I'm really tempted to sing "Boston's a Battlefield" like "Love is a Battlefield," the 80s song, but I'm not going to do it. I promise.
But let us get into our top moments of the episode.
Yes, let's, John. I think you should go first, I think.
Yes, well, mine is very simple, but encompasses a lot. It is Yorick and 355 meeting Dr. Mann. I mean, first off, I just thought it was great getting Dr. Mann on screen.
Yep.
I absolutely love how Diana Bang just makes Dr. Mann... There's a kookiness to her. Mm-hmm. There is that kind of researcher type person who's so deep in her work. All this information that she's sort of giving over to Yorick, and the fact that actually she doesn't really like teaching. She would prefer to be doing research.
Absolutely.
But she needs to do this because otherwise she would have to be recruited by the government or some massive pharmaceutical monolith, as she describes it. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't want that. So she sort of, she puts up with teaching really so that she can actually have an independence or in her work. And
I love that that's in reaction to Yorick trying to reach out an olive branch to kind of get some ground there. Like, he's trying to make a friendship here with her.
Definitely.
We hear at the beginning of the episode Yorick kind of going, oh God, she's going to be talking about the fact that she's a doctor all the time and the fact that she doesn't have a television. I bet she's going to make a big point of this. So he instantly wants to hate this person that he's going to be spending time with because she's going to be testing on him all the time. And then he tries to reach out an olive branch to her, slapped away immediately, the olive branch being, oh, you must like teaching. My girlfriend's a teacher, so he can talk about the girlfriend that he doesn't really have at all anyway. But I love that she just bats it back at him.
Absolutely.
And her line about, I'm not in this to save men. That's the furthest thing from my mind. There's so many other things that need to be saved in this world by the research I'm able to conduct now on you and ampersand.
Definitely. But I also, when that falls flat, I love the fact that he goes to the place, which gets just a really great kind of sort of deadpan look from Dr. Mann, when he says, "Oh, I'm also a teacher." And she's kind of like, "What? And it's like, I teach magic.
Yep.
I teach card tricks and escapology and sleight of hand." And just the look is absolutely priceless from Alison Mann. I thought it was really good.
It's like it's directly from Pia Guerra's drawings of Mann's character, the deadpan look of, "You are an idiot, aren't you?"
It's just really, really good.
Yeah.
But let's just pull this back, because the other thing I really like about Alison Mann is her own agency. The idea that she is trying to keep herself independent in some respect of her thoughts. That initial encounter of them is that she stabs Yorick. She doesn't know that it's a man, and despite that, as soon as she notices, it's you can see there's a palpable excitement as the researcher that there's a man, and certainly when she realizes that Ampersand is also male, and
you on your own are useless. You and him together, now that's something I can work with.
Exactly. But I also love her sort of response and how she interacts with 355, who is very, she's a spy. She's army trained. It's about following orders and duty. But Alison here is, 355 is saying the president has chosen you. You must come back to Washington. And it's like, well, no. First of all, she doesn't seem to really like this government, and she's not entirely a fan of Jennifer Brown.
The most vanilla option we could have had.
Exactly. And I love that actually Yorick doesn't let it slip that she's his mum until right at the end, just before they are about to head off to San Francisco.
As the two of them are drunk. You probably should know that President Brown's actually my mom. Yeah.
But I like how it's like, no, we have to go to San Francisco because that's where my research is. I spent 15 years on this. I need to go to that backup because here it's been destroyed, because we hear that the dissidents that are at a standoff with the National Guard in Boston, and why it is such a terrifying hellscape, have captured the science building where all her work is. And so I like that she really is like, no, I don't care whether the president is ordering me at all. And also just with the gun pointed at her by 355, and just she coolly just pushes the barrel away from her face, saying, "Can you point that somewhere else, please?" So I love this sense of her being this strong woman with a lot of agency, but she's she's to the point, direct, but she's just great. I really enjoyed seeing this character and meeting Yorick as well. I think the dynamic there between the two of them is so good. I mean, just even them getting to know one another over playing snooker, and obviously lubricated by the Chardonnay as well, and her going on about all the different possible variations of the genetics of men and women, and correcting Yorick when he says, "You said men don't exist," and she said, "No, I didn't. I said that there are multiple variations of what an infinite that can happen." So really love that sense of them, I guess, bonding over a nice cool glass of Chardonnay whilst talking science and playing pool.
Absolutely. I love that Yorick's interested. I love that he's trying to get the full details from her about what her explanations of what's going on, and that's really interesting. And it's really important. We're 5 episodes into the show, and it's the simple explanation that people used to describe this book is, and as we did, I think, when we were talking about it on What If, we kind of went, what if every man in the world died? That's the simple premise behind the show. But I love that this is being brought out more with Dr. Alison Mann, and she's the right person to do it as well, obviously being a geneticist. Her specifically going, it's not just the fact that every person with a Y chromosome died that day. There's loads of people that didn't know they had a Y chromosome that died that day. Loads of people were lost. But you're forgetting about the biodiversity within the world. You're forgetting about the fact that, every type of animal has also lost the male part of that, which means the food supply will run out, or the meat supply will run out at some point, because they won't be able to sustain life.
Yeah.
There's loads of animals, dogs and cats, pets that we've had for years. They're all going to die out over time as well, This is a massively important impact that's happened on the world. It's not just that women have risen up, as we mentioned before. It's not just that women have risen up and taken over the world, which is a completely different story. This is a story where the world has lost a huge amount in this one moment, effectively. So that's what she's terrified about, and that's what she wants to use her skills and abilities for.
Well, that's it. It was really nice when, because she is she's a gay woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the fact that, that 355 and Yorick, went to her apartment and, began to make assumptions about her. Yorick was along the lines of, there is no TV here, this isn't good.
Yep.
But it was also both of them seeing a cot in the apartment, believing that she had a child.
Mm-hmm.
And, but she doesn't. And, she is a lesbian. And I really sort of like the fact that that's where this discussion, trying to sort of widen Yorick's mind, that it wasn't just human men that died, as you say, it was the other species. But she also said, we lost so many good people. She
Exactly.
kind of just neutralized that gender element.
Yeah.
And talking about the different variations were, as you say, people who actually would have thought they were women died because they had the Y chromosome.
Exactly.
From the different genetic variations that she discusses. So I thought that was really, really interesting. But I love the way, as you say, it just broadened all of that out as well there. I liked her sort of kind of dissing Yorick's mum, really, all the way through this. I don't think she has much love for these dissidents, but she's also not entirely critical of them. She makes
she hasn't joined them. Yeah.
No, exactly. And that's, another part where she, faces up to 355, where, 355 is saying these dissidents, they're crazy. We get this really nice, sort of wall with graffiti on it, with a whole rake of different things such as lies, hoax, liar with a picture of Jennifer Brown, that they're wanting answers, with text with, what you did, this whole idea that, 355 and indeed the Jennifer Brown administration and the people there in the Pentagon, that these are all sort of crazy weirdos and dissidents and different factions. And I like that Alison Mann actually says, but they believe that the government is hiding something from them as to what happened. And she says, they're right, pointing at Yorick. So that's not crazy.
Yeah.
And she talks of her experience that, every day there are secret there are labs that are doing secret tests around viruses, bacteria. Not to say conspiracy theories, but I mean it's the reason why, as public servants, you sign the Secrets Act. Say if you're in the UK, there is things like GCHQ. There is a MI5 and an MI6. I mean, there is secrecy,
of course,
at the heart of government from a political and a security point of view.
Yeah.
As much as in business, you have that from a, intellectual property or all these types of things that are, confidential in whatever way and to whatever degree. So I liked her challenge to 355 as well, because, I think you can easily see things as black and white here, of, the Brown government trying to sort of bring society back, rescue it, which they are, and the dissidents just being against that, or with, it was all the men that died, but just human men. And I think it's really nice seeing Alison Mann's conversations over the course of this episode really just widen and broaden and show the complexity of what's happening here. Really, really good.
And that's one of the reasons why you do this as a TV show rather than as a single movie or something like that. You have to bring in all of these discussions into the show. And I think Dr. Mann is a really interesting character to do that. You say that she's not a conspiracy theorist, but some of the things she's talking about are absolutely conspiracy theories. And she is saying, I'm standing here in front of the last man alive. and the government knew about him. So therefore the government is hiding things from us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she's connecting those two dots together, which is something that conspiracy theorists do all the time. They find one thing that they can latch onto and then say that's the proof of all the other conspiracy theories that we have. So that's partly an element of Dr. Mann's character. She's a very different character. She's not a lovable, sweet scientist that's going to jump on board the train here. She's going to use what 355 is offering, which is effectively the connection with the president. She's saying to them, I need to get to San Francisco. Well, you have a connection with the president. Let's get a plane and we can get there really quickly rather than walking there. It's not that I'm joining your gang to do what the president wants us to do. It's, I want to continue my research that I've been working on for 15 years.
And I love the fact that some of that research isn't entirely legal and it's human cloning, and the look on Yorick's face, this idea of multiple Yoricks being produced here.
I feel like there's a few watchers of the show that wouldn't be happy with that either.
I just thought that was really the expression from Yorick was priceless at that. And I think, something you can tell is at the back of his mind, he brings it up again, about being cloned, this idea that he it's some kind of, dystopian, science fiction movie that he remembers from, watching as a kid or something around cloning. I thought was really, really good. I think the other thing I really liked in this was that, speaking of the different factions that are kind of doing tit-for-tat fighting with the government, is that they actually have met that secret as well in one of their sort of safe houses. Whilst Yorick is sort of left by 355 so she can scope out the area and everything. He goes in. He uses his lock picking abilities and escapology to get in there. And I like the fact that, he has actually been seen, but in this case, she does believe that he is transgender.
Exactly.
And tells him where he could go to get more testosterone.
Yeah. Because her brother is in that community, effectively. So I think that makes logical sense at this stage. We're a couple of months in now, so the chances of you feeling that you have a man standing in front of you are very low. So I like that she jumps to that conclusion.
Yeah, definitely.
It makes a lot of sense. We give Yorick a lot of criticism in the first couple of episodes for this idea that he'll run off at the drop of a hat, and that he'll make these stupid decisions to run away and put himself in danger where he can't be put in danger. In fairness to him, in this episode, 355 basically gives him a box and tells him to sit on top of it with a knife. And the reason he gets up and moves here is because he hears the fighting that's going on in the city. He hears the tear gas going off and he hears the grenades being thrown, effectively. So he's absolutely right in this case, I think, to take shelter inside.
Definitely.
He didn't know that it was going to be the home of where all those posters are being created, effectively, for the anti Jennifer Brennan posters being created. I do wonder which would be worse for him, if he was found out as a man or if he was found out as being the child of Jennifer Brennan. I don't know which would go worse for him.
I would say it's just compounded.
I think both of those are reasons that these people would have captured him and taken him prisoner, because he's very valuable to them as the child of Jennifer Brennan, or as the first and only male
definitely
alive. Yeah.
I like that we see him do his lock picking again to try and get into the Union Club where they think that Alison Mann is, when they're tracking her down, because of some great pictures of her sort of taking a dump on the front steps, or possibly
many times.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love the fact that this is probably somewhere where she has maybe tried to become a member,
exactly,
and has 100%. Been excluded, or it's a men only club. And so I liked that she would go and take a dump on the steps of an institution like that. To be honest, but he tries picking the lock there. 355 is basically gives him a time limit. He says, give me a minute. And she gives him 10 seconds and she just keeps on counting down, metronomically. And I love that he's like, that's way too much pressure, and off you go. And, bang, she blows out the lock.
Yeah. And I do, again, I feel a little bit sorry for Yorick at this stage. She only really has a few, really good skills that he has, and lockpicking is absolutely a skill that he has. It's something that he's learned how to do. He knows how to do it. And this was his opportunity to impress 355 with his skill. She didn't give enough time. She didn't realize how difficult it was, and it effectively lands on the gun and goes, I'm going to shoot it off.
Exactly.
And it was an opportunity if it had happened. you know, in future this will come into play. Or I assume his lockpicking skills will come into play and get them out of some sticky situations.
Yeah,
That's what,
and his escapology, I guess.
yeah, absolutely. But this is the first opportunity he's really had to show off, and she's kind of going, "Nah, I could do it easier with my gun," basically.
And I guess to the point of the stabbing of Yorick by Alison Mann, you know, when she's being given out to by 355, she said, I just thought that you know, the people that used a gun to open my door were possibly here to hurt me. You know, you can't really argue with that reasoning. So, this for me was just great. Loved the interaction of these three characters.
Absolutely. One of the things I will give huge props. I think it'll be between Diana Bang, the writer of the episode, and the director for the episode. There's something really cool that they've done with how Dr. Mann speaks and interacts with other people. I love that we have this moment, which would be, you know, if this was in Independence Day, let's say, when 355 walks into the room and goes, "The president has asked you to step up for your nation and come back with me to Washington to save the world," effectively. If that would be done as a massive speech, it would be something that would be quoted and people would cut it out and show it as a clip.
Yeah.
In this case, because it's Dr. Mann she's talking to, Dr. Mann talks over the end of that sentence. She doesn't even let her finish. And she goes, "Yeah, I know what you want." And the answer is no. And when 355 is taken aback by being talked over, when she has this big delivery, a big speech, it's like the response from Dr. Mann is like, "Oh, I'm sorry. What I meant to say was, no, thank you." I love that.
Yeah.
And all the way throughout the little bits in the background that are going on, again, from the director and the writer of the episode, there's little cues of who this character is. When Yorick and 355 are exploring her apartment, you see the list of people who've won the same prize as Alison Mann, listed on a board, like a plaque, effectively, that she was obviously given when she won this award. And every single one of them has a note over them saying how much she hates them, effectively, and what's wrong with them, why she doesn't like them. So she has no time for the scientific community at all. She knows how good she is, and she knows she deserves everything she gets. All the penises drawing on pictures of the men that formed this club that she's now taken over.
Really good.
Great little touches of who this character is.
There was. And there's the moment as well where she's changing her top, and there looks as well to be some scars on her belly, which I'm not entirely sure what they are, and I'm not entirely sure I remember from the comics.
Okay. But, there are some cues here from the comics, and I'm not going to go into them, of course. You could probably guess there is something going on with the crib that was found in her apartment. There is something there. There's a story there that will come out possibly later in the show. But yeah, that was a very interesting conversation, and the way she turned it back on Yorick, where he's going, I saw the crib, I assumed she had a child, and she turns it back on him going, "Men always like to talk about women about pregnancy and children." Well, you know, that's a weird response to it. It seemed like she just wanted to shut down the conversation. Yeah. So I think we might see more about that story in the future. Yeah,
I think so too. I think that was certainly a lingering camera shot there on those marks. Just one other point really just to draw from this is, you know, a lot of intrigue for me with 355. She is going to talk to the president to say that they've arrived safely in Boston. You know, the president is worrying because of the crashed helicopter being found. She thinks Yorick could be dead. But she purposefully breaks the satellite phone that she was going to call the president on. Yeah. You know, and she goes off on this other mission, to, the address that she found in her mailbox at the safe house, of her former sort of handler. Yes. And interestingly then comes back, and we don't know whether she has actually phoned the president yet.
I don't think she has.
No, I don't think she has.
Because we see the other side of the story, and we get the frustration of Jennifer that she hasn't had a phone call from her, and that was never resolved at all throughout the episode. It is interesting though that she was making the phone call, she was typing in the number and dialing digits, she presses the call button effectively, and then stops, hangs it up, and then breaks the phone. So she had full intention, and something changed in her mind. I think this is what I really like about 355 in this show, and what I really like about Ashley Rowan's performance as 355 is, you know, there's every possibility playing out through her head in her performance, the stillness of her. You know, she's thinking about a lot of things, but it's inscrutable what it is exactly that has made her make these decisions. She's very close to this safe house that she got the details of to go to. So of course she was probably going, right, I also have to have this other mission, this side mission that I've been waiting for since I got the details, and need to go check it out. You need to go and see whether this lead will play out for me on my own journey. But because she hasn't shared that with anybody else, we don't know why she was there. We don't know what she was looking for. Was she just looking for a commander above her to give her some real instructions rather than her following her intuition, which is what's gotten her to this point? Was she trying to take a little bit of pressure off and go, okay, grand, I'll find my handler, the person that was in control of me, person that knows more about the culprit ring.
The person who recruited her.
Exactly, the person that knows more about the culprit ring and can give me some guidance as to what I'm supposed to do, because she's kind of been playing it off the cuff since everything happened.
And we see another agent here, 525. And again, the other part of me was, I just wonder whether 355 possibly sort of took out 525 as well. I mean, we don't know and we haven't seen, but certainly what we do see is that 355 does get her signature telescopic baton from the comics, which was really cool to see.
I don't think this is a spoiler. Just why it's her signature weapon. I'm gonna say it. I like the fact that she's effectively has this weapon because it's really iconic for her from the comics. The reason she has it is because Yorick's kind of like Terminator 2, John Connor, and she's the Terminator. He's effectively said to her, you can't use a gun on every single thing that you see. You need to use this to kind of keep things quiet and not kill everybody, or not have the potential to kill everybody in your way. So I love that she opens it up the way she does and has that really confident stance. So you know there's a weapon she's used before many times.
Absolutely. And I guess in a sense, 355's mission, there's a personal mission here in that, she had to get to Boston. I guess she chose that because this house was close to Boston. So she's merging opportunities here.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, she chose Doctor Alison Mann from the list, didn't she?
So I think there's a personal mission going on with her. And we see this with 525 as well. Well, we get a bit of background about how the culprit ring recruits here, in that they were both, well, at least we get 525's, and she just assumes, and I guess you were the same, that she's come from a broken family, orphaned, and has no one.
Exactly.
And so, that your family becomes the culprit ring, effectively. So you bring allegiance to your organization in terms of recruiting from an early age. A bit like with the Black Widows, I guess, ultimately.
Yep. And no one to miss you if anything goes wrong, all that kind of stuff. Speaking of Black Widows, that really did feel like the Natasha Romanoff and Yolanda, her sister, the battle that they had in the kitchen in Black Widow. That was it really like the battle of two very good fighters together in the same room. Like, we've seen 355, we know how good she is as a fighter. So a really strong fight there, seeing her fight someone that is an equal, effectively.
Yeah, it was a really good fight. Yeah. And I think the other thing, in the same way that I felt this was 355 trying to find out something about herself, then we also, on the flip side of that, we see Jennifer suddenly kind of wondering, what is this organization, the culprit ring? Who do I have protecting my son? And I thought that was just a nice little sort of jolt about this relationship of 355 and Yorick as well.
Yeah, I really do like that. I really like that moment of Jennifer Brown going, hang on a second, this woman came into my office. I'd never seen her before. And she went, I'm from a super secret spy organization that you've never heard of, but you've signed off the budget on, and I report to you and I do everything for you. And then she brought back my son, and then I just sent him off with her without checking any records, because she told me there are no records of me. That's a really, really interesting moment. I'm wondering for other viewers, again, people that haven't read the comic books, 355 has been a central character, and I think a lot of people have pinned their love of the show on 355. They're saying, this is the one character that I love watching every single week. It's a really exciting character. And now suddenly we have a little bit of shade thrown on her in a couple of different ways. The fact that she's not calling back in to Jennifer Brown to tell her son's safe. The fact that she's gone off on this mission without telling anybody where she's gone and what she's doing. And she's going back to this odd, shady organization, the culprit ring. And now this question from Jennifer Brown, this president character that seemed pretty good for at helping to save the people that are still alive. So she seems like a genuinely nice character, genuinely good character. And she's now throwing shade on the one character that everybody's loved since the start. Is this going to be a difficult transition for people to have? Is 355 a shady character for them? I'm wondering whether it's going to put a little bit of a dark spot on 355 from now on.
Well, it certainly brings in the intrigue. It certainly questions her motivations about what she's doing. I think at the moment, I would say there's a personal motivation here, because effectively with the a significant collapse in the membership of the Culper Ring. Certainly her previous safe house and handler. And then she has lost her family. That's her family being lost. She doesn't, I get the impression she would have a similar background to 525 and her story.
Yeah.
And I think that's just being done by proxy here to maintain that mystery of 355. And so I think, it just questions elements of it. At the moment, I feel it's more a personal side rather than she's suddenly going to turn against the presidency or even Yorick. But nonetheless, once or if she finds her recruiter, the person that's recruited them, and seemingly, all the other female agents have kind of taken that cue, I guess, from their own safety deposit box and personal items that they had. I guess that, she, 525 has also had that address. Yeah. So,
or she had a clue to get her there.
The important thing at the moment is the recruiter isn't there. And so where is the recruiter? What's she doing? Is she in fact still alive? And so I think there's a really, it just adds another layer of intrigue, but also complexity to this relationship of 355 to Yorick, but also the president and the institution of the presidency. So it was really good.
I wonder, does it add a little bit of extra complexity to the audience that they weren't expecting? Is the big question as well. So I wonder how it's turned people around on the character, if it has at all, because it is all shade here. And as far as I remember from the comic books, the moment when Jennifer Brown questions, who the hell have I put my son with? I think it was the end of an issue, and you waited a month to find out the next part of the story. So luckily we don't have to wait a month for the final.
It is a great moment, though. I love that. I love that she confides with her assistant Christine. I love that you get the coders to try and break it into those hard drives that 355 brought back. I'll worry about the excuses around it. Exactly. Let's find out what this organization is and what it does. And so, I thought that was really sort of jolt moment for Jennifer Brown.
One last thing on that moment with 355 as well, just before they head off to San Francisco now on the extended road trip, let's say, we do see that she's taken another locator device, one of the ones that was in the safe house. So we know that the way those work is that they pair up to each other. So she's taken one, it's blinking. So she's going to either try and find the pair, or someone that goes to that safe house will know that there's someone out there with this locator device, potentially. So that's how they'll track each other. And then she reaches up and does something interesting. She reaches up and grabs her necklace and twists it in her hand. That's the necklace that she also picked out from that box. So I wonder, is there greater significance of what that necklace is? It seemed like a very simple necklace, a very plain necklace when she took it out, but it's just because it was in the same box that she got the address for this location. I wonder, is there something else in there as well?
I guess so.
There you go. We've already talked a little bit about Jennifer Brown and her side of the story. That's my big point for the episode, is what's going on in the White House, because it's a big story. We mentioned before, this stuff was something that you checked in on maybe once every 6 or 7 months about what's going on at the highest levels of office in Washington, effectively, when you're reading the comic books. I love that it's become a bigger part of the story, and I really like what's going on. I like the fact that there is President Brown, who's effectively been pushed into this role. And now we have someone that nobody wants to become president, Regina Oliver, arriving back. There's a few people that do want her president, but the terror that's been going through the women who've all been working together to sort out what's been going on in America, and they're all going, well, that's not going to be what she will want to do. What Regina Oliver wants to do is get in power and enforce her beliefs on everybody and enforce the things she wants to do, a position she never would have got in the previous administration because she was pushed into a minor role.
Exactly. I mean, I have to say, though, I think the arrival of Secretary Regina Oliver, I really, really loved. I mean, what swagger. I mean, even though she was in a wheelchair because she's still kind of recovering from her injuries, it felt like, you know, I'm good or I'm confident and I know it, like real arrogance.
Oh, yeah.
You know, almost a superstar swagger with the shades on arriving in the Pentagon.
Yep.
You know, effectively asking the president, have you got any food?
Sending the president off to get her food.
Which was really interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of knowing, though, I think the predicament that she's in, that Jennifer will, and I you know, has made clear that she is retaining the presidency here. And just the same, not necessarily.
I think she's kind of said to her, that's something that we could discuss another time. Yeah. We've got a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things
but
to
she
sort
hasn't
out.
Brought it up.
Yeah,
like, it's almost stating it by not mentioning it. Yeah. And I
trying to avoid the conversation, as you do when you don't want to.
But like with Kimberley as well, just believing that, you know, well, the former president, you know, was voted in on a landslide and we still get a socialist. And I love the fact that actually what she'll be describing as a socialist in Jennifer Brown and, you know, possibly calling her a communist in future episodes is just probably so unlike that term but in the sense that she is actually just trying to be helpful and to pull everyone together.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. That was kind of my question from that conversation, from that discussion. I know Regina Oliver does not want Jennifer Brown and never would want someone like Jennifer Brown as president in normal times, right? I totally get that. I get that they would have this argument on the floor of the House when there's 200 representatives around them. If the two of them got into an argument, that would be the argument. You're a socialist, I'm a Republican, or I'm a capitalist. I get that, but we're now in a world where people are dying because they don't have enough food. Is it socialism to feed those people and to create camps and help those people out?
No.
I've never understood that perspective that socialism is helping people out. I just don't get it. And I know there are people that have that idea, but I just don't understand what Regina Oliver thinks she would have done differently if she was in the position of power.
I think it's the idea of society and community. And I mean, I think you get the impression here that even Kimberley probably said that, you know, they talk about their disagreements previously, and that even Kimberley has said she was strident. We know that she was fringe. Yeah. So she's probably hugely ideological, and that it's more about, it's like in the UK with Margaret Thatcher. It's, you know, society is dead. It's all about the individual, and individualism, and the ability for individuals. So I guess there's a combination of all of that sort of locked away in Regina Oliver. Yeah. And I guess, though, the idea that she's a fanatic, she's strident, is that she's just got an ideology. I guess we've seen that with the pandemic, people's ideology about whether you wear a face mask or not, or even take a vaccine, or even stand 2 meters apart. For some people, that control, or that perception of control against their own freedoms, however they rationalize it or think it through, is they are the polar opposite. And so it's almost, I think, the sense I get is that Regina, it doesn't matter that we're in an apocalypse. Yeah. Her views are her views, and that's how you run it.
Yeah, but
even if it doesn't make sense for the situation.
But I'm trying to run it through my mind as to what she would do in this circumstance. Do you think she'd be going for a survival of the fittest attitude? We're a central government. We're not supposed to get involved in your lives, so you guys deal with it yourselves and see who survives after it.
Potentially, and I guess that she wouldn't be using tear gas on the factions or the dissidents in Boston.
There'd be no rubber bullets there.
No, it wouldn't be tear gas, and it wouldn't be rubber bullets. Yeah. It would be, there would be a supremacy side of the state, and I guess then it would be, why are we doing this? But we'll see. We'll see. Yeah. I think that's the interesting thing here. We'll see how these two sort of come to blows in that sense.
Yeah. I want to point out something else, because I don't think I pointed out in the podcast. Please, apologies if I have pointed this out in the podcast, but there is a possibility that Jennifer Brown is, in fact, the real president of the US, correctly voted in. There's a mention in the third episode, I think it is, when Yorick is finally meets his mother and gets the explanation of what she is and where she is, that she became Speaker of the House and then became President. And in order to do that, she got promoted to there while they were searching for someone that could be alive and take over the presidency, and then got promoted into the president's seat when they realized there is nobody else to take over that position. So technically, the standing government have decided that she is the one to lead the country, right? Now Regina Oliver's come back, and she has a claim on that throne, I will say. So there is a claim there, but technical process is she's moved up through the ranks. Jennifer Brown has moved up through the ranks and gone into the position of president. So I wonder, is there an argument there? They'll have to look through the Constitution. I don't know whether we have time for that in a show about the apocalypse. But I wonder, does she have to be impeached to lose the position of president and put Regina Oliver in there? Or is that the argument that they're going to have potentially later on in the series? Because I don't think a lot of people want Regina Oliver to just swagger in there and take over the seat just because she was next in line in some really distant list that nobody thought possible.
Well, I get the sense that the cabinet, as it's construed at the moment, doesn't want that either. So I guess it will be this, politics is power. So it'll be the power play. And we've seen Kimberley sort of lining herself up.
Absolutely. We saw
whether it's about trying to get leverage over Jennifer, or like in this episode with Christine, but also it's the wink wink nudge nudge to Regina, which is we need to stick together, and recruiting people of like mind. And
Kimberley already has a good army of people behind her,
absolutely,
as well. Remember, that don't feel that just because those women were in specific positions of power that they have any more right to the wives of senators that were in this Republican administration when this whole thing went down. So there's a good old battle going to be going on in Washington. I'm really intrigued by that, and it's something, as I say, it's not as detailed in the comics. It's there, it's in the background, but it's not as detailed in the comics, and it's something that I do really like. I do like political intrigue in TV shows and movies, and I think they're doing it really well. And I do think Diane Lane is playing it so well in the show. The fact that she's dealing with the family side of things, that moment when she's being told the helicopters are going down, and you see her under the table holding the hand of Christine, who's calming her down, and above the table she has to show as if she doesn't know anything different other than two pilots stole helicopters. So I love that she's playing that. I love that she breaks down in her room. How she plays that is really interesting. The fact that she thinks Yorick's gone, and then outside she's dealing with this threat to her presidency, effectively. And she believes she's the right person for the job because she's doing, with the team around her, they're all doing everything they can to help the people that are suffering out in the world. And she knows if Regina Oliver gets in there, that's just her gaining power, effectively. I do want to talk about Christine a little bit in this episode, because I think this is throwing up another quite controversial, quite difficult topic to talk about. This show is definitely not shying away from difficult topics and difficult ideals, but we have Christine effectively confirming that she's pregnant. In this episode, it's 12 weeks now, 3 months since the apocalypse started. So we think it might have been the guy that she went on a date with. On that first night when she went out, the date to pick up the dry cleaning for Jennifer Brown. I think it might be that might be the father. But the difficult part of this is, number one, that the only other person that knows about it is the doctor and Kimberley. They're the people that know about it. Kimberley's one person you don't want to have that information in the hands of. The fact there hasn't been that many births since the apocalypse began, effectively, since this nightmare scenario happened, especially in an environment in the White House or in the Pentagon. The Doctor hasn't seen any of this, so I love how the Doctor plays this moment.
Yeah, it's really good.
But you also feel, even though Kimberly's saying this absolutely stays between us, this is a very private situation, I wonder what will change that situation. I wonder what will make that an escalated situation. And I think the clue is in Christine's response to being told that she's 12 weeks pregnant.
Yeah.
Where she's told, you're having a girl, and she says, I'm not having anything. So it feels like she doesn't want to be pregnant. She was a career person when she was going in there. She was dating, but it seems like this pregnancy has taken her completely unawares. And in another society, she may not have kept this child or this pregnancy. She may have terminated it in another world, in the normal world pre-apocalypse. And now she's stuck in this situation. So I wonder, again, we've got someone like Kimberley who is very strong Republican with those kind of beliefs, probably very anti-abortion given the kind of society that they're in here. And I wonder, will that raise its head when Christine may choose not to give birth.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think this will be really interesting to see because, I mean, you know, when Christine has the moment where she is bleeding and she just says to Kimberley, could you try and blackmail me another time? You know, because it's to what extent is Kimberley, you know, how is she going to leverage this over Christine in order to get to Jennifer? Or will it become this rallying cry moment of, you know, what Christine wants for herself at this moment, and maybe other elements connected around this, and what Kimberley wants to use it for. And I think that will be the interesting thing moving forward here, because, you know, this is very early days as to what's happened. But you get that sense when they pass on the corridor and it's all smiles from Christine to Kimberley, but she knows that the last person she wants to know about this is Kimberley, and you see her face drop as she walks away. Yeah. And as they pass on the corridor. Yeah. So, and again, this will be a really interesting side of this story, because as well, I guess everything in the Pentagon at the moment is quite claustrophobic as well. So it's this pressure box beginning to gain more pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see with Christine, she can't exactly reach out to Jennifer and tell her what's going on. She can't tell Jennifer that she's pregnant because Jennifer's going through everything else that's happening. She's being challenged for the presidency and thinks that she's lost her child. So you see her coming into the room and having to deal with the president breaking down effectively and dealing with her problem while Christine's going through this really difficult time as well. So I think this is all really interesting storytelling, and I'm intrigued to see how it plays out in the rest of the show. That was my major point. I don't think anything else on that, on what was going on in the Pentagon. Anything else on the episode, John?
No notes from me. What about yourself?
Only one note, just thought it was quite cute and wanted to mention it just, when Yorick is in, looking around at the, printing press and all the stuff, the material about his mother and about the government. I love that he goes through all the letters and everything and picks up a little ampersand.
Yeah, that was
cool. And puts it in his pocket because he's kind of going, oh, my little ampersand, my little pet. I've got a little stamp now that I can use, in future. So I just thought it was a little cute touch that was in there.
Yeah, that was really good. But Derek, with the roundup, what did you think of this episode of Y: The Last Man?
Overall, I love this episode. You know, there's better episodes so far in the season. You know, obviously the massive explosion that went down in episode 1 and the end of the world that was going on. That was great. The initial setup of the show has been really interesting for me. I've enjoyed pretty much every episode so far. It did in greater depth. But this is the comic book. This is exactly what I was hoping for when I signed on to watch Y: The Last Man. So to me, this is pretty much perfect. We're setting off on our road trip with our gang now, with our main 4 characters, and see what they get into. And I love that they've set up, they're traveling from Boston to San Francisco. That's a massive trek that they're going to be going on across the country, and hopefully meeting some really interesting, new societies, across the country. It's a shame we're not seeing some of the other characters this episode, but that's the whole point of this ensemble show. We won't get to see them every week. And,
absolutely.
We'll see bigger chunks of their adventure if we do that as well. So I think this one, just nailed exactly what I wanted from the show. So I'm really up on this one. How about yourself, John? What do you think of it overall?
Yeah, I really like this episode. I would give this 4.5 tuna sandwich jokes out of 5. Yeah. I just really enjoyed, Dr. Mann, 355, Yorick, Ampersand, all coming together. I love the sort of little side quest from 355 and what that means, and just that immediate moment of, you know, maybe her own personal mission here, but also the president is now concerned about who she's actually given the protection of her son to. So that was really good. I love that Alison Mann just brings this kind of researcher sort of view of this world, and she broadens the mind for Yorick here. So I really enjoyed this an awful lot. Yeah. And I think, the slow build of this show, I actually am really enjoying. Yeah. I think earlier on, I think it's tough with slow builds because you can go, I don't know where that episode's going, but I think you can see this pressure pot rising, both in terms of the foursome that's about to head off to San Francisco, whether it's an internal pressure of 355, because you see her looking, fiddling with her necklace, kind of going through things in her mind. It's almost like she's agitated in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And who's best to further agitate her probably than how Yorick behaves.
That's true.
And the pressure of what's going on in the Pentagon now that you've got the arrival of Regina Oliver as this sort of direct challenge to Jennifer Brown's presidency, but also with the political power machinations going on between all these players. It is a chess game. And so it'll be interesting how that builds. So yeah, I really enjoyed this episode of Y: The Last Man, and would give it 4.5 tuna sandwich jokes out of 5.
Oh, excellent. Up a 0.5, I think, there, over the course of your discussion, Chad. Very
yes,
good.
I did.
Very good. I think this just long form storytelling with a definitive ending is what we have at Y: The Last Man, which I really like. The fact they're spending some extra time with characters than you would if it was just a movie or just a one series event or something like that. We're actually getting some real time with the characters, which I'm really enjoying. Thank you so much, fellow survivors, for joining us for our discussion about Y: The Last Man. We'll get on to some feedback from you in a mo. But just to say, if you do want to support the podcast and support what we do here, you can go over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries. Support us for any amount monthly, and we will give you a huge thank you, of course, on the podcast. You can also support us by going to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI and buy me a coffee to edit all the podcasting goodness that's been coming out here. But another great way to support us is sharing the podcast. Can't stress enough, sharing the podcast with other people and the people that follow you on your social accounts. It does get the podcast out there, and we'd love to have even more fellow survivors.
Absolutely. Any which way you wish to support us is fantastic and very, very much appreciated from all of us here on TV Podcast Industries.
Absolutely.
But I think with that, let us get on with our feedback.
Yep.
Yes. First off, we got an email through feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com from Bart McKendry in Canada. John, Chris, and Derek, I enjoy listening to your reviews of Y: The Last Man. I am trying to decide if this show is for me. I've watched 4 episodes now. I am concerned that this show is too much drama and too little sci-fi. I am a post-apocalypse genre fan. Some of my favourite movies are Mad Max, I Am Legend, and The Postman. TV shows like The 100, The Last Ship, Revolution. I enjoy solving the mystery of what happened, lessons of survival and resource management. I'm having a hard time believing some of the details of the event that killed almost all male mammals with the Y chromosome. Most strange is the timing of the event. Nothing should spread that fast. Even the speed of sound takes 12 hours to cover the Earth. If the event started in Israel, it would take 6 hours to reach Washington, D.C. We saw animals dying in Oklahoma and New York the previous day. So why didn't some humans fall at the same time? Why didn't massive animal death trigger security procedures for the line of succession? We have men isolated all over the world under various degrees of isolation. Did the men on the International Space Station survive? Submarine crews? Arctic research stations? Why did Yorick survive? I suspect it has something to do with ampersand. The monkey is also male, and every time someone goes near him, they are warned that he bites. Was Yorick bitten? Could that have transferred whatever is protecting ampersand to Yorick? Should we be prepared for Yorick to develop amazing monkey powers? Is the name of the series misleading? Maybe it should have been called Ampersand, the Last Male Monkey. The science of the event is hard to believe. This leads me to the possibility that this story is not real. It might just be a dream or divine intervention. Many of us have been disappointed by an ending like Lost. I hope this is not the case with Y: The Last Man. Finally, I just have one question. As the show is 99% women, why am I listening to a podcast hosted by 3 men? Did you consider including a female voice in your show? Bart McKendry. Well, thank you so much for the feedback, Bart.
Thanks,
I think only you can actually answer the question as to why you're listening to a podcast hosted by 3 men on a show that is 99% women.
Yeah.
I think that is all we can say on that. But I think it's great that you are enjoying our coverage, for sure.
Well, yes, but there is a really simple explanation. Y: The Last Man is just one of the 60 odd shows that we've covered on TV Podcast Industries, and TV Podcast Industries has been around for 6 years with myself, Chris, and John, and also with one other host, Irene, who used to be on the show many years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. Because of the amount of shows that we cover, it's almost impossible for us to get someone else that can fit in with the timings of recording that we do. We record about twice a week, so we've been really lucky to have Chris on as much as he is, but myself and John are here almost every episode throughout that time. But getting a fourth person and adding them in and making sure that they're available all the time is quite difficult. But luckily, we do have our wonderful fellow survivors who do send us in their thoughts from across the globe and their experiences, which add to our discussions about the show as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thanks so much, Bart, for choosing us to listen to about your Why the Last Man, about Why the Last Man, the show. It is a drama. Absolutely. We have said that before, that it is very much a story and a tale about how these characters experience the world post-apocalypse. So I'm not sure whether there will be a huge amount of sci-fi in the show, but you are on track of some of the things that may happen in the show. I'm certainly not going to go into spoilers for what does happen in the show. There are elements of what you said in your email that are explored as the show goes on.
I think
some very specific ones.
I think certainly some of the questions that you raise will be answered here. Or certainly, I hope they will be in the show.
Absolutely.
For sure. Certainly, yes, what did happen to all these Arctic research stations or submarines or even sort of the International Space Station, for sure.
Yeah, like if it's an airborne virus and everybody's and people are in an enclosed environment, a sealed environment, well, with no new air coming in, maybe that might be something.
We don't even know if it was a virus.
Absolutely.
They have gone to a geneticist, not a virologist. So again, it may not even be a virus as such.
We don't know yet. But
this is the journey that we're on, I guess, in finding that out.
But the good news, I'll definitely say this is definitely not a spoiler. The good news is there is an end. There is a story that can be told. There's a number of different ways it can play out, but this is not going to be, it's a dream, it's not real. So the bits that you're putting together from the information that you have, it's a good shout. You have some ideas in there and some approaches to what might have happened, but they haven't given us enough information, and there will be more information, I believe, to come in the show. And if it doesn't come in the show, if something horrible happens, like it gets cancelled after season 4 and they haven't finished it, the comic books are out there. There's only 60 of them, and they do give the explanation of how everything happened to lead up to the apocalypse, at least in the comic book version. So I'm sure they'll have a version of that in the show.
Yeah.
It's not a dream. I definitely want to say that.
Well, I hope not. Yeah.
Just like in Lost, it wasn't that they were in purgatory for the entire time. All that stuff happened. That was all after the stories happened. So that isn't it isn't the same.
Bart, you have triggered him with Lost.
Triggering.
I will have to calm him down. I'll have to calm him down.
No triggering at all. But thanks, Bart.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bart, for your feedback. We also have another email.
Absolutely, yes. Victor Van Doon got in contact with us to say, "Greetings, survivors. Dr. Mann is a real pistol. Almost nuttier than why. The brown kids are very disappointing. Are they parental failures or just spoilt brats? Perhaps a bit of both? They would not last long in a particular zombie series, The Walking Dead. Casting found an actor almost as gruesome as President number 45. Trouble is a-coming. I do not envy Jennifer's position. How can a constitutional workaround prevent someone dangerous taking office? I have totally fallen for Agent 355. That 355 versus 525 battle and subsequent discussion was awesome and enlightening. But why did she break the satellite phone? Was it a ruse to find her mentor? I would like to hear the tuna sandwich joke, but knowing why, maybe not. It's Kim's compassion for Christine's pregnancy genuine or a ploy? Keep the faith, survivors. Victor Von Doom. Loads of great points there, Victor. I think we talked about a lot, bits anyway, of what you talk about there. This tuna sandwich joke, I wonder will that be similar to the joke that went all the way throughout all the seasons of Game of Thrones that we never got to hear the joke itself. But you never know. They're going to be on the road for quite a while, so that joke may be deployed again in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Victor. I'm really pleased as well that you think that Alison is almost nuttier than why. I think so too.
Yeah.
And I think, yes, trouble is a brewing with Regina Oliver's swagger-like entrance into the Pentagon. And
with Kimberley's compassion, in inverted commas, for Christine as well. I think there's trouble coming there too.
Yeah.
I also don't think Hero and Yorick would survive very long in The Walking Dead. If there was zombies coming after them. Yeah,
definitely not. And I think you're right. I think you're talking about 355's mentor. I was calling her the recruiter, and I think she was both. So I think mentor is also, why she has done that. And I've kind of have the same question, did she break the sat phone just so she could go to that house?
I think
or
so.
was there something else? Because it seems strange, that she would get rid of that communication device.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't seem particularly sensible. But again, I think there's a lot of intrigue here with 355. So yeah, great stuff, Victor. Thanks so much for your thoughts on that. We also got some feedback over on our Facebook group. Please head on over to facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. First up was Dr. Bob Phillips on episode 4. Road trips were more fun when there were fried tomatoes and convertibles. This is getting richer and flavoursome with each episode. A bit like Chris, I stalled a little after episode 2, but I'm now unable to guess where this is going to end up, but it has to be good. Hero, Sam, and a burst of dysphoria, the freaky robot cat, the way Yorick is such an awful, awful choice. His insipid, privileged, self-centered null, not evil, but not good, and not really neutral either. Really, really intriguing. Thanks so much, Bob, for that. It is. Yorick is just, it is, why is he the last man? He is, just, I think, yes, that centered null is a really good description of him, for sure.
Bob. Yep. Thanks so much, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bob.
Joe Stively says, this episode did a lot to make me like Yorick. I think I'm just going to have to accept that Y is going to be an absolute idiot and make dumb decisions, not unlike some men I know, but at least he was showing some compassion this week. But this episode did also lower my opinion of Agent 355. She's played as boss level badass, and she got snuck on twice. Not a great look. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thanks so much, Joe. Salim Akisla says, this is certainly shaping up to be the cross-country adventure Derek mentioned in the last podcast. 355 seems to have her own agenda, wondering what her angle is. Pretty cool getting to meet one of her colleagues and getting a touch of backstory on the organization. That scene looked a lot like Natasha meeting Yelena in Black Widow.
There you go. Yep.
This episode also confirmed what I was thinking regarding Ampersand's inclusion on the adventure. My first thought was, why are they bringing this freaking monkey with them? But then I thought the geneticist may want to check him out too, which appears to be the case. A great introduction of Dr. Mann, and wow, Christine is pregnant, as if this show needed more going on. I also appreciated the mention of the search for the 2013 Boston Marathon bomber. I was in Boston for that, and it really was as wild as described here, though it seemingly would pale in comparison to what's going on in this version of the world now. Thanks so much, Salim, for the feedback. Yes, I think the cross-country adventure is about to take place. It's interesting, isn't it? Where is this going? Because all of a sudden, two of the main characters are heading to San Francisco, not just simply returning back to Washington, D.C. or staying in Boston. So it's a really, it does chuck in a few kind of firecrackers into where it can go and how it can be looked at.
Yeah. Absolutely. It must have been awful to be in Boston for the Boston Marathon bombing. Like I remember the coverage that we had on TV of police in all the streets and everything locked down, during that period. But I'd say to be there must have been really, really tough, experience anyway. Glad they were caught. Thanks so much for your feedback, Salim, and thanks everybody that sent in feedback to us for this episode.
Absolutely.
Once again, if you want to send in feedback to us, you can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. You can go over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries, or if you want to send us a voicemail, you can record a voicemail and send it into the same email address, or you can go to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com and record up to 90 seconds of your thoughts on any of the shows that we're covering. And someone who did send in a voicemail to us with their thoughts of the episode is Mr. Steve Brown, who sent in his live Steve for episode 5 of Why the Last Man.
Hello, TV Podcast Industries. This is Steve, and this is Why the Last Man, episode 5. Wow, that's pretty telling right there, how racism as American as baseball. Yeah, you're a dark spirit, Boston. I love that she gave him a knife, told him to stay put your mask down. How many times she got to say, put your mask down? Okay, I can tell you that's actually pretty accurate for military. If you have the bearing and you have the words, you can talk your way through just about anything, especially if they're young and dumb. Okay, don't tell me that he found Dr. Mann by accident in this building here. Maybe not. I don't remember if they had a picture of her or not. Oh, nice. She can tell that he's transgender or male, or as he's pretended to be before, so he can take his mask off with her. No, it of course is a power grab, Mrs. President, Madam President. This is Madam President, would it be? Yeah. It absolutely is a power grab. I love that Yorick is obsessing about this whole TV thing. All right, don't tell me that we're to believe that Agent 355 does not know how to pick a lock, that she's going to have Yorick do it for her. People have got me started to noticing music more and more, and this music right now, while they're entering this Union Club of Boston, it's real tense, and I love what it's doing to me. Well, I guess I know where the series is going next. We're moving on, road trip to San Francisco. I love this actress. She was on Resident Alien, the one playing Dr. Mann. Great, and she's a conspiracy nut job, and now Yorick's going to tell us a joke. I can't wait to hear this. Did she just break that antenna? I'm pretty sure she did. Oh, Agent 355 seems to have met someone equally skilled. Is this another agent? Not to explain about guns too much, but you took the magazines out, but you didn't empty the chambers, so there's still a bullet in those guns. Okay, another moment of explaining. I have one of those collapsible batons, and to close it with the palm of your hand is double tough. I'm sure it was a prop, but still. Ooh, yeah, I can't do it. Oh, she lost someone who was trans. I'm sorry, this is the whole scene with Dr. Mann and Yorick. So she's carrying a locator. Okay, I'm sorry. Can't wait to hear you guys talk about this one. Talk to you later.
Thanks so much, Steve. The roller coaster ride of the live, Steve. It's a great fun hearing that. Really, really interesting getting your perspective, of course, having been in the army and your perspective on some of the elements that are going on there. I love the idea that as long as you got your bearing and as long as you have confidence enough, you can pretty much get through any group, especially if they're young. Really good.
Thanks, Steve. I thought there were probably still a bullet in the chamber.
Yep.
As well, because that whole then you click to get the final bullet out of the chamber, and I was wondering, whether with 355 coming back to the Union Club there to go on, and begin the authorization, I guess, of the San Francisco road trip, whether she has left Agent 525 alive, in fact. So
525's alive.
525's alive, or not, maybe. Yeah.
Also, I didn't mention the music in the episode either, but that music that they used did sound like the composer for this episode has chosen some things that are going on in the scene to use as the music, and here it sounded like it was chopper blades that were forming the music for that really tense scene. And because this part of the episode at least was talking about the crash, the helicopter crash, of course, I was wondering whether it was just being connected in there, but I am certainly not an expert on the music.
Very good. I like it.
And Steve, yes, signature weapon for 355 is her baton. So, it's cool to see her do something that is really difficult. And I love you saying that it would be almost impossible to do even for you. So it is really difficult, but it is like her signature weapon, her superhero weapon, let's say.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, Steve.
Yeah.
For your feedback and live review of episode 5 of Why the Last Man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, fellow survivors, for joining us for this episode. We will, of course, be back with Why the Last Man, episode 6, Weird Al is Dead, next week. And of course, we're also covering Marvel's What If as well, weekly, and we will be looking at the 9th and final episode of the first series of Marvel's What If, next week as well.
Yes,
so please, join us, for our discussions around everything why and around everything what if.
Absolutely. We've been really glad to have all of you on board, and great to hear all your thoughts and feedback throughout both of those shows. Looking forward to episode 6 of Why the Last Man next week and the finale of What If. Thanks so much for joining us. Talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, fellow survivors. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep surviving.
Bye.
Bye.